Okay, guys, so let's go to HTML and CSS module. Um, so in this module here, we will just learn the basic of HTML and CSS. And I'm quite sure most of you, if not all of you, already know some HTML and CSS. Okay, let me just finish those. Voila. Okay. So if I open the module HTML and CSS, and as you can see, as normal here, we will have learning objective, suggested study, deliverable, and lesson plan. For deliverable for this week and next week, we will have one deliverable, which will be your portfolio. We'll try to build a very nice portfolio using just HTML and CSS. And that's your learning objective simply. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to click on let's go to lesson plan. And in the lesson plan here for week 1 here, we'll explain a little bit HTML, CSS basic and some advanced concept of CSS and responsive design. And of course, for the project, we have only one project. So if you click on the project here, yeah, just one project here. It will be individuals that everyone need to do his portfolio separately. And yeah, that's it. Don't forget to create. Whenever you do the project, create it from the template. Create it from the template. Please do not create an empty repo. Anyway, let's just go directly to HTML and CSS. So I have my VS Code here, as you can see. If you have any question during the explanation, please interrupt me and ask the question here. Let me get rid of this one here. Voila. So first, I have a project called test. Inside it, I have index.html, which is a file. All the extension for HTML, of course, all the file belong to HTML. They ended with a specific extension, which is HTML. Everything related to CSS is also ended with the extension called CSS. For JavaScript is JS, as you know. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to create a folder and name it CSS. I'm going to move this CSS here. And yeah, that's my HTML. Now inside the HTML, currently I have nothing. So to create what we call the boilerplate, boilerplate is just some code here. So to generate a page very quickly, all we have to do just click on the exclamation mark and enter here. When I click on the exclamation mark and enter, I will have just a boilerplate here. So here for the title here, we'll study a little bit HTML and CSS. Voila. Now, what I need to do here now, normally this HTML file, I can include some stuff inside this HTML. So if I want to link my CSS to this HTML, all I have to do, I can just click. And as you can see here, I have link, and then I need to include the relative path. I told you the relative path normally start either with // or // So I need to start with // after that CSS, and then style.css. And voila, that's how we connect our CSS. Is the idea clear, guys? Yes?
Yes.
Good. So what is HTML first?
Yeah.
So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's a markup language, just like Markdown, just like CSS. HTML also, it's just a markup language. It's a markup language because we use some tags, and these tags here, it has a meaning for the browser. So whenever I have specific tag, the browser understands this tag, and after that, try to render this element on the browser. Okay, I told you it's just a markup language. If I want to compare a web page with a human body, so the HTML, it will be like the bones. CSS, it will be like the skin. And JavaScript, it will be like the muscle. If I don't have a muscle, I cannot move. And that's the same idea. So what HTML is going to do here, it will give you the structure of your website. Of course, the structure, when I create some element, I will see the element, but they will not be styled. They will be very ugly. And that's the reason why we are learning CSS. So CSS will help us to style our element. I think that should be clear here. So let's have a look at the structure of this HTML here. So as you can see here, first I'm starting with angle bracket. So I have angle bracket, exclamation mark, doc type HTML. So what this line is saying here, it's just saying that the type of, so HTML also we have different versions. We used before HTML4, but this doc type HTML is just telling that the type of HTML or the version of HTML is 5. Currently, all browser, everyone actually is using HTML5. So this line simply is just saying that's HTML5. After that, for the HTML, I need opening and closing tags. So HTML, most of the element, most of them, not all of them, most of them, they have opening tag and closing tag. That's how I describe an element. So as you can see, the opening tag for HTML, so to create an opening tag, I will have angle bracket, HTML, and I have something called attribute. We will study now what's the attribute. Let me remove this one for now. Voila. So as you can see, I just have HTML. That's what you call opening tag, angle bracket, angle bracket. As a closing tag here, it will be angle bracket / HTML. So most of the element, all the time, HTML element, most of them, they have opening tag and they have closing tag. And you can put another element inside this element. So here we have the HTML. And inside the HTML, we have two parts here, as you can see. We have the head. So we have opening tag, closing tag, and we have the body, opening tag and closing tag. Now, what you need to understand now, so that's my HTML page. I have the head and I have the body. The head here contain a lot of information. Most of this information, we will not see it. So this information here, mostly they are meta tags, they are for the browser. We will not really see anything related to anything in the head. But we will see everything we will see on our website inside the body. So not in the head, but inside the body. The head just contains some information that are necessary for the browser to render our page. Clear so far? Yes?
Yeah.
So now, of course, we have a lot of HTML tags. And some of these tags, they're opening and closing tag. So if I have opening tag, I need to have closing tag. Some of them do not. They're self-closing tag. We will see some of them. What's important now, inside the tag, inside the opening tag, I can have something here. For example, if I want to define the language, I can just say lang, and here I can define it in English. So what do we call this stuff here? We call these attributes. So different element or different HTML element, they could have different attributes. Okay, now this attribute, it will differ. They will not be the same. They will be differ depending on the element. For if, for example, I have head tag, I will have some attribute. But if I have, for example, a body tag, or if I have an image tag, so this attribute will differ. I will have a different attribute depending on the tag itself. So not all attribute can be applied to all elements here. No, depending on the element, I will have different attribute. So here, as you can see in the head, I'm just defining the language. That means the language, and that means it is English. So I have meta tag here, and this meta tag here is just defining the charset UTF-8. You don't have to understand this charset for now. It's just the computer normally, how can I say it? The computer normally do not understand. I don't want to make it complex, but the computer does not understand this letter here. It does not understand H, does not understand the L, does not understand angle bracket. The computer only understands one language, which is what we call the machine language, zeros and ones. So there is some rule to translate this character into 0 and 1s. That's what you call the charset. So for now, for us, most of the time, if not all of the time, we will use the charset UTF-8. Don't worry about it. We will explain it later in JavaScript. But now what's important for me now here, this is what we call the meta tag. Notice the meta tag does not have opening tag and closing tag. The meta tag is self-closing tag, as you can see. I just have one tag here. So some tag, as you can see, they're opening tag and closing tag. Some of them are self-closing tag. That means I don't need opening and closing, just one tag on. Also, I have another meta tag here, which is attribute name, which is the viewport, the coding device, width device, width, initial scale, it's 1.0. Here is just for this guy here, this meta tag here when we are using a mobile. Again, don't worry about it. It's not that important. You just need to include this one here. Why? Because it helps us a little bit when we try to make our website responsive to see it on a mobile here. This is just we're just making the initial state, the initial scale 1. Yeah, that's it. We have another self-closing tag, which is called link here. We have 2 attributes, which is the relation, it will be style sheet, and the href, which will be the relative path to our CSS file. For the title here, the title, it will show here. Let me show you. So if I want to see whatever inside this page, I can right-click on it. I have live server, I click on it. It will open it in a new, voila. It will open it in a new page, as you can see. And here, as you can see, that's the title, HTML and CSS. Voila. Is it okay so far?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, remember again, all this stuff here, everything inside the head, we will not gonna see it really. All of those are just for the browser here. It's some information for the browser. It's not really, we're gonna see it. Some of these information, as I told you, they're quite important. For example, the chart set for the browser, it's important. If you don't include it by default, it will be UTF-8. And also the viewport here, which is the content here, when you make our website responsive. Of course, as you know, we can link our style, our CSS style, and here's the title, which will be appear at the top of our page. Okay, that's fine. That's not a problem here. So now we know what is this guy for, which is the doc type HTML. It just defines that HTML5, as I told you. We know that in HTML, most of the elements are opening and closing tag, and inside them I can have another tag. Some of these elements are self-closing tags. That means I don't need 2 tags. So for instance, I have HTML opening and closing tag. As you can see, I have head opening and closing tag. I have the body opening and closing tag. Okay, that should be fine. Now, first, let's see some of these elements here. So inside the body here, I can add, for example, heading. Normally, whenever we create a website, we should have a title for the website. And to create different title of the website, I can create different header. If you remember in Markdown, we had header 1, which is £1 sign. So £1 sign, and then this is this title header 1 like that. If I want to make it header 2, I need to make £2 sign like that, and so on. Well, in HTML, it's quite simple here. It's all I have to do is just H1. And as you can see, H1 here is it's opening and closing tag. And here I can just see my web page, something like that. Of course, if I go here, I will see my web page, as you can see. So that will be the title here, as you can see. Yeah. Of course, I can duplicate this one now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can make this one here H2. I can make this one here H3, H4, H5, and H6. Voila. I don't have more than that. So let me just get rid of this one and open my CSS here, actually. Voila. So as you can see, H1, H2, H3, H4, 5, 6. And of course, if I right click here and I inspect my element here, voila, I can see here my HTML now. It's inside the browser now. So H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. Should be okay so far, yeah?
We can
No?
use H1 multiple time or just one time like MD?
Well, I mean, normally we shouldn't use H1 multiple times. If you want, you can use multiple times, but that's not the way. I mean, normally H1 is supposed to be used once on the website or the web page. So if you want, you can use, of course. It's not a problem. But I mean, it doesn't make sense because normally your website should have one title, should not have multiple titles, right? If you go to the newspaper here, if you go to the newspaper and try to write an article, the article normally has one title, which will be one big title at the top. It doesn't make sense to the article to have multiple titles. And that's the same actually for the website as well. And if you go to a specific web page, it doesn't make sense to have multiple H1. Normally we have one H1, and after that you could have multiple H2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Yeah? Should be clear,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what's my different heading. What I'm going to do here, of course, I've already linked my CSS here. So I'm doing here, I'm just importing specific font here. And you may tell me why you are importing this font. Just this font is a little bit nicer. I'll show you how to import font from Google Font later. But what I want to do now, I just want to select the body. So if I want to, I don't like this background here, it's white. So what I'm going to do, I want to change it. How can I change it? How can I apply some style here? This is a body, right? If I hover over it, it will give me the body here. What should I do?
Body
Apply
type.
background.
So first I need a selector. I need somehow to select this body element, and after that I can add some property. And I can just use the tag itself here, and I can just say background color, for example. I can make it black 333, and fonts, just the color, I will make it white. So it should be FFF. And yeah, just font here, font family. It will be Poppins, the font I am using, which was Poppins here. I just import this font here. Voila, that's it. Do I need something else? No, that's all I want here. As you can see, I just want it to be a little bit black. Fine, so now we know different heading, as you can see. So we have H1, H2, H3, 4, 5. Now what if I want to create a paragraph here? How can I create a paragraph? If you remember in Markdown, to create a paragraph, it's just normal English. You just write English by default, the element, it will be a paragraph. But of course, for HTML, that's not the case. So if I want to create a paragraph, I can use the tag P. The P also, for paragraph, it's self-closing. I'm sorry, it's opening and closing tag. And here, of course, I can add some dummy text, as you can see here. So let's save this one. I have some dummy text here. Voila. If I go to my website here, as you can see, I have my paragraph here. Voila. Okay, so we know how to create a paragraph here. How can I create a link? So what I want now, I want somehow to have a link on my website here. For example, Google or YouTube or something like that. And when I click on it, I want to go to this website. So how can I create a link in HTML? Well, to create a link, I have a specific tag for that. What do we call it?
A.
Yeah, so it's an anchor tag.
Like,
yeah, it's just a tag or anchor tag. So the a tag here, of course, as you can see, I have an a tag here. It's opening and closing tag. And here I need to write some description inside it. And I can put my link here. So for the a tag, I have an attribute called href. And href here, I can put inside the href the URL to this website I want to open. For example, if I want to go to, let's go to Google here. I just need to copy this URL. Voila. I'm going to my website. Now all I have to do is just need to put the URL here. Voila. So now we have the URL to Google here. And if I click on this link, it will take me to Google. But the point here, if I go to my website here, see, I see nothing actually. Well, I see that's my tag. I can see it, but I don't see anything. Yeah, so what I need to do here, I need to add some description here. For example, click here to go to Google, for example. Voila. And now if I go back, voila, that's my link here, as you can see. And now if I click on it, it will take me directly to Google. Voila. Is there any problem with the tag or the anchor tag?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
And in the last exercise, we use the A tag, but then when we do the quality check, it says that we should use LI tag outside of the A tag. We cannot, for the last exercise, yeah.
So you do it this way. You create an LI inside it.
Okay.
Like that? Like that?
No, outside. I think it was outside.
Yes, but your code was like that. How can we code like that? This one is inside.
Inside, yes.
Well, that's not a problem. That's the way how we do it normally. But you need to be careful a little bit because there is some element here. They are just inline element. An inline element, you cannot have like a block element inside an inline element. We will see that now. So this one is okay. It's not a problem. But if I will do the opposite, what do I mean by that? Well, if I do this one here and I come and I create, for example, a div inside my A tag, that's not allowed. Why? Well, because the A tag here is inline element and div here is a block element. So it does not make sense to create a block and a block element inside an inline element. Don't worry, we will check those. What do I mean by inline element and block element? Is it okay?
Okay.
Fine. So now we know how to create a link. I've seen how to create a link actually. So let's keep our link. Let's get rid of this div. That should be okay. Google. Now I want to just to render an image. If I want to render an image in HTML, first I will need an image. So let's just scat. And yeah, let's just keep this one here. Save image as. And I just need to rename the image to cat. Okay. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to go to inside front end. It was test. I'm going to just create a folder for image here. Let's name it img. And I'm going to paste it here. Okay, now if I go to my image, as you can see now, I have a new folder called image. I want somehow to show this image on my website. So how can I do that? Well, for the image here, I also have a tag which is called img. Remember that img here, it's self-closing tag. So I can write it this way, or I can add slash before it. It's not like an anchor tag, so I don't need opening and closing tag. It's just self-closing tag. For the image, I have two attributes here. Of course, I could have multiple attributes, but two of the very popular one here for the image is source and alt. So the source here, I need to just add the relative path to my image. As I told you, the relative path normally start with dot slash or dot slash. So I can just say dot slash. I can go to my image and voila, that's my image here. And for the alt, it must be a description for my image. So of course I have a cat, so I can just say a nice small cat. For some reason, if my image does not render or my internet connection is very slow or something, if the image does not render and the user hover over the image, he will see the description here. And that's the reason all the time we need alt. So all the time you need to include alt inside your image. If I go here, voila, as you can see. Let's say for some reason this link is not correct or for some reason. So as you can see here, I have the description of the image, as you can see. I don't have the image, but I have the description, and that's why the description is quite important. Because when I read the description, at least I know what the image it will be about. Voila. Yes? Okay or not?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so as you can see here, HTML and CSS, of course, I can go through some tags, but we have a lot of tags, of course. And for you, I've already shared with you MDN. So MDN here, this is the documentation, is the most trusted documentation. We use it for front end in general. If you click on here, we have reference to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, HTTP, APIs, web extension. So it's really include all the information, anything about HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You will use it a lot. Now, the problem is little bit, this MDN sometimes little bit complex for beginner. So if you don't like MDN and you like to start with something a little bit user-friendly, there is, I think, W3 School. It's okay, W3 School. It's not bad. Here,
Yeah,
it's
that
just
is
a
the
width.
best.
It is not the best, but for beginner, it's okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
for beginner.
so if you click on this one here, it will show you the different element. It explains very simply. Also, you could have some example explaining all the HTML and CSS same idea. So if you are, eventually we're gonna use MDN all the time. But as I told you, MDN is a little bit not user friendly for beginner, or is not a beginner friendly really. So if you want, you can use this W3 school here. It give you a little bit more information, and after a few months, you can then after that move to MDN here. Anyway, all the time you need to use the documentation. No one can remember everything when it comes to programming. That's the reason why we need to Google stuff, which is normal, of course. We don't remember everything. I Google a lot of stuff. Even sometimes there are stuff that are simple. So yeah, you don't have to remember everything. It will come naturally when you write a lot of HTML and CSS. You will remember a lot of tags. But then again, what really you need to understand more than memorize stuff. For memorization, we don't need to memorize anything. We have internet and we can just Google stuff. Even for a job offer or something like that, you are allowed to Google stuff actually. It's part of our job. Anyway, that should be fine. So that's how we render an image. I told you the attribute normally. So let's just say attribute. The attribute normally, we use different attribute depending on different HTML tag. Those attributes here just give us extra information about the tag. What is the structure of this attribute? Well, normally we have the name of the attribute, and then after that we have a value. Name is equal to value. For example, href, it's equal to, as you can see, I have a value. Source, I have a value. Alt, I have a value, and so on and so on. So those attributes are quite important. They used to provide more information about different elements. The class, so if I give it a class here, as you know, if I class, let's say, my link, my dash link, this is an attribute. The class is an attribute. The ID is an attribute. So everything inside the opening tag, and those attributes, all the time we put them in the opening tag, not in the closing tag. They're inside the opening tag. These attributes here, they give us more information about the element, the classes, the IDs, all of that. They are just some extra attribute. That's it. No more, no less. Should be okay so far? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We have some formatting element. Of course, we don't really need to use this formatting element. I mean, doing something in HTML and CSS, you can do it in many, many different ways. But I mean, it's okay to see some of this tag here. So for example, if I want to make the text bold, so let's, for example, let's create a p tag. And here inside this p tag, I want to make my text bold. I can just say hello and add something here, just in reverse. Hello, everyone. So if I want to make my text bold here, I can just surround it by, we have tag for that. We don't use this tag anymore a lot actually, but we have a p tag actually like that. If I go here and here, and as you can see, my text is bold here. Inspect. I have a p here, both for bold here. Well, no, we don't really need that. Why? Because simply here, I don't need really this tag. If I want to make my text bold, it's quite simple actually. All I need to do, I need to select my element. Let's try to select the element using just a p tag here, and I can just say font width. So font width here, it's talking about the boldness here of the whatever paragraph is. And I can select bold here. And the same result as you can see. So there is some tags which we used to use a lot for HTML, but now, I mean, we don't really need it because you have CSS, and in CSS we can control a lot of formatting and styling. Okay, so we have P for bold here. We have strong. We can use the tag hold strong. And I can just put hello here as well. Let me get rid of this one so it will not affect it. Strong here, just make it a little bit bold as well. We have I for italic. Sorry. So we have I for italic, and as you can see, it makes it just like the italic. Yeah, if I want to emphasize the text, we have EM. Again, we don't use this tag a lot, to be honest, but voila, it's just emphasizing a little bit, as you can see. I can make it small, I can make it sub and substring, but no, for now, we don't really need it. Let's talk a little bit
Okay.
about the list. Yes, question?
Yeah, if we have a lot of text, how can I select it from CSS for make it visible or another word?
So
If
again,
I
what's the
have
question?
if I have many paragraphs, how can I select from CSS to make it a bold? Because right now you use one word at a paragraph. If I have a mini paragraph, how can I select it from CSS to make this one bold?
So I want to select this paragraph. That's what you want.
Okay, if you have another paragraph like welcome, how can I select it from? When I
Like that.
use it, yeah,
You want to
how can I?
you need to select a specific paragraph or all of them.
No, selected one of them.
You just need to give it a class or ID.
Okay.
Hello. So now all you have to do now, because it has a class, you can just add voila my class, and I can just say color red, for
Sam, I have a
example.
question.
Yeah, just relax a bit. Let me finish this one, and
Okay.
then you can ask. And as you can see, it's been selected here. Yes, what's your question, Susanna?
Is more recommended use IDs or class? Because when I see tutorials, the most of the times the people use classes and sometimes they don't recommend use too much IDs.
Yes, but I did not talk about CSS yet. I mean, I'm just talking about HTML, by the way. Don't
Okay.
worry, we will come to the CSS. Do not ask me now about CSS because now we are just focusing on the HTML. I'm just trying to select just to show something for you to different color, but we never study CSS yet. So let me finish the HTML, and after that I will explain CSS. It's really depend. Yeah, we use the classes, just to answer your question. We use a class. What you need to understand, the classes as reusable. That means I can use it with different element. The ID are unique. So if you want your element to be very unique, you should give it an ID. If it doesn't matter here, you want to use the same class on multiple different elements, so you should use classes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but don't worry, you will study it now. So let's create a list here. How can we create an order list in HTML? Any idea?
UL and
LI.
LI.
LS.
So UL, an order list, and inside it we could have different multiple LI here. Let me get rid of these links here. I don't want them. Voila. I don't need that as well. So that's how we create an order list. So the unordered list, it's just UL for unordered list, opening and closing tag, and inside it I could have multiple list element here. For example, I can have a coffee. I could have tea. I could have milk. Something like that. If I go here, as you can see, that's an order list here. If I want to make it order list, it's quite simple. All I have to do, I need to change this element from an order list, UL to OL, which should be order list. If I click on here, as you can see, they are ordered now. Should be clear now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the most important stuff what you need to understand in HTML here, what we call block level element and inline element. What's the difference between the two? Well, let me show you. Now, some element, they are block level element, and some element, you need to know those elements. And some of them are inline element. They're quite important, actually. For example, if I say div, so if I create a div here, and I type hello, and let me create another div here, word, for example, like that, hello word. Now, if I go to my website, notice what happened. Well, that's something very strange. Why? Because the word hello, as you can see, That's the word hello, but there is a lot of space. So as you can see, my div is include a lot of space here. See, I have a space from here to here. I have all this space, but the word here is being on a new line. Why this word is not here? What's the reason?
Because is a block element.
Is a block element.
Too different.
Because divs normally are block level element. What do I mean by block level element? That means they will take the whole space from here to here. Even if the content is small or big, it doesn't matter what is inside them. Block level element, it will take just the whole, as you can see, the whole space from here to the end. And if I have a new element, it will just appear at the new line, as you can see. Voila. Well, if I take the same approach, but I use it with, let's not use a div, let's use span, for example. And here use span, and span is also an element actually, but it is an inline element. And as you can see here in span is different. So as you can see in the span here is only taking the space it needs. And here is the same idea, and both of them here, as you can see, is the same line only. So, sorry. So as you can see here, we have some elements which are block level elements. That means it take the whole space. It doesn't matter if their content is small or big. They take the whole space from the beginning to the end. And if I have a new element, it will appear at a new line. And we have some elements which are inline element. Inline element only takes the space it needs. For example, for this span, it's only this the space for hello, so it takes only this space here. And if I have another span here, it will appear here next to it. Is the idea clear? Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, now I can have, so I told you div is a block element. I can have inline element inside the block level element. So as you can see span here, I told you the span is just an inline element. I can have it inside the block level element, but the opposite is not possible. Like just I explained, I think Emilia asked me the question, I don't know. But anyway, I cannot have a div normally. So if I have a span, this creates the opposite. So if I have a span, I should not have a div element, block element inside this span. Why? Because the span should take only the space it needs. But here inside it, I have a block level element, which will take everything. So it doesn't make sense. Is the idea clear?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So I should never create a block level element inside an inline element. The opposite, okay. But as I told you, I cannot create a div inside the span. That's not correct. But if I have a block level element inside it, I could have multiple inline element, which will be okay. For example, hello. And here I can just duplicate this one and make it work. Well, that's no problem at all. If I refresh it here, as you can see, that's my div. My div here is taking everything. So it's a parent. And here I have to span inside them, as you can see. Okay. Now this guy here is my browser in the element tab. What do we call it? Before we know how to call it, as you can see, if I compare this one with my HTML, it is my HTML actually. So as you can see, my HTML somehow is being, I don't know, somehow is being rendered. Rendered, that means I can see it in the page, but I can see my HTML here in the element tab. What do we call this HTML? I told you previously, we don't call it HTML, we call it, what do we call this one?
Block
Yes.
element.
No. I told you these elements here, this one, we don't call it HTML. It has another name.
Main.
Block
I'm sorry?
level element.
It's not about the elements.
Main
My
main page.
No, it's not a page. My HTML in the browser, what do we call our HTML in the browser?
Attributes.
Hypertext markup language.
No,
Attributes or block.
it's not related to the element. It's not related to the element. We just call it DOM, I told you before. Document Object Model. I told you before, we don't call this one here. Everything is the element here, we call them DOM. So the DOM, which stands for Document Object Model, it's simply our HTML. It's being parsed by the browser. So that means our HTML is being parsed. Parsed just means analyzed. So whenever I write any element tags, the browser try to interpret, try to understand what this element, it shows this element. So it parses this element and it shows it in the element tab. And this element tab here, we call it, everything here, we call it DOM. DOM stands for Document Object Model. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, the DOM is tree of elements. Can anyone tell me why do we call it tree of elements? So the DOM is tree of elements.
Because usually it works with the parent and the children. For example, inside of HTML, you have a head and body, and inside of head, you have other tags and a body. You can have the header, and the header will be the children of the body.
Very good. So we call it tree of element because as you can see, I have one parent, which is HTML. Inside it, I have two children, head, and I have some meta tags, and I have the body. And inside the body, I have a div, child. And then inside the div, I have two span children here, as you can see. So that's what we call it tree of element, just like a tree here. So we have one parent, and then we have two children. And inside those two children, this child here, which is a body, has another child, which is called div. The div has two children, two span children, as you can see. Voila. So we call the DOM just like a tree of element because we have one element and then inside it we have two elements and so on. So if we try to imagine it, it will be just simply like a tree. Is my escalator. So I will just the root my HTML and then here from the root I have two elements. So that's my HTML tag. Inside it I will have head. Here I will have body. And then from the body, I will have different elements. So in my case, I have a div child. And from this div child, I have another two children, which will be span and span. That's the reason why we call the DOM, it's just a tree of elements. Should be clear, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know now what's the difference between inline element and block level element?
Yes.
Good. Frame, responsive design, semantic elements. Semantic elements are quite important. So we have some tag in HTML, they have meaning for the browser. And we have some of them, they don't have any meaning for the browser. What do I mean by that? For example, if I want to create a header, I want to create the title of my website here. One title, as a title, I will name it Hello World, for example. So normally, the way I'm gonna create it, I will create a header. And inside the header, I'm gonna create H1. And I can just now type Hello World. Voila. Now, if I go here, as you can see, that's my title here, which is Hello World. If I inspect it, so I have a header here. Inside the header, I have my H1 here, as you can see. Now, first, I've seen previously, there is a huge, big difference between head and header. They're not the same. There's big difference between the two. This guy here, it just includes some meta tag for the browser. This header here is telling my browser that, okay, I will include a title here, a header here. So these guys and these guys are not the same. They're very different. Now, you may ask me, if I replace the header with the div, would it give me the same result or not? So if I replace it this way, and I go, it's kind of the same, right? Yes? No?
Yes.
If I replace, so if I notice both of them, they're quite similar. But if syntactically I want to use, I'm going to use this way, I'm not going to use this way. Can anyone tell me why?
Accessibility.
It's related to the browser, actually.
Because the
So-
header is actually for title and the div is for block and body and stuff like that, main and stuff like that.
Okay, so some tags, they have meaning to the browser. So the browser understand that this element here or this tag, it has a meaning. That's what we call semantic elements. So semantic elements, that mean they have meaning to the browser. Now the div has no meaning. It's just what the browser going to do here. It will just say, okay, this is just a container. This is just a box. The div is just a box. What I'm gonna put inside it, it doesn't matter. Because for the browser, a div here is just a box. It's not semantic element. It has no meaning for the browser. But if I come to the header here, the header has very clear meaning to the browser. The browser knows that I will include one of the headers inside this header here. So it's just a matter of meaning here. So that's the reason why there is specific elements that are being created. Although now, if I look at both of those here, this one and this one, visually there is no difference between them. But actually, depending on the browser, there is big difference here because this one is much clearer and better comparing to this one. Why? Because the header here is simply its semantic element, so it has a meaning to the browser. So typically it's contain a group of introduction, blah, blah, blah. But what you need to understand here, we have some tags, they have some meaning for the browser. The browser, whenever it encounters this specific tag, they know what they are used for. And when it's very important to use the correct semantic tag. For example, if I'm gonna create an H1 here, I can use a div here to put my H1 inside a div, but as I told you that it will not semantically be correct. In order to make it better and correct here, I can use the specific tag. So we have specific tag for the header. I should use it simply. Yes? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
So some of other semantic tag
also-
here. Yes.
And also, I think it will have an impact on SEO.
Yes, indeed. You are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct. So it will impact a lot of stuff. But as for now, what I want you to understand that it is much easier or much better for the browser, much better for your website to use the right semantic element. So if you're going to create a title, let's say header 1 or 2 or 3, it's a great idea to surround it by header tag. And some of other semantic tag, we have a lot, by the way. I can create a main. We have the main tag. And inside the main tag here, I can put all my sections here. So section also, it is semantic element here. It just says that I have section of the website, as you can see. Main, section, form, table, article. So all of these elements here, they have clear meaning. That's the reason why we call them semantic element. Question. Footer, I forgot footer. Footer. So normally we divide our website generally, this way here. I should have a header, I should have a main, and I should have a footer. And the header and the main and the footer, all of those are semantic elements. Semantic element means they have meaning for the browser. But I can, of course, replace all these semantic elements with divs, but here when it comes to styling, it will be a little bit more difficult. Also, it will affect your browser. Your browser will just not understand exactly what you are trying to do. Yeah.
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 Okay. Let me remove those here. We have something called relative path and absolute path. We talked about this one before. So what is a relative path? What is absolute path? Well, let's take an image tag, for example. So you can just say img like that. And now here, let's show 2 cats, for example. Cat 1. And let's duplicate this element here. To duplicate this element, if you are on Mac, you can use Option, Shift, and lower arrow key. So it will duplicate it for you. If you are on Windows, I think Windows I don't know on Windows. You need to check the VS Code shortcut. So Option, Shift, and arrow down key here, it should duplicate the element for you. Okay, so I have 2 images here, as you can see. I have cat 1 and cat 2. Lucky for me, I already have a cat here, so I want to include this image. If I want to include this image, should I use the relative path or the absolute path? Yes.
The one with the dot and slash?
Relative
Yeah.
path, it's on your local computer.
Yes.
Other path, it's on a website.
So it is currently, this image here is in it's in my project, it's inside my project. So it does make sense here to use the relative path. What do I mean by relative path? So what I have to do is just say dot slash. Just a second. So I can use here dot slash. Dot means the current folder. The current folder, it will be test. So dot slash, I can go to my image here and I can just add this one here. So the relative path, as you can see here, it means it's relative to your project. Dot mean my current project. Test mean test simply. Test dot slash. I mean, I'm just saying go to inside the image, and inside the image you'll find this image here. That's what we call the relative path. What is the absolute path? Well, the absolute path, I can go here and I can find another cat. Maybe nice cat. And I can just click on this one, for example. If I right click here, I have something called copy image address. And now I can just copy image address, put it here. Voila. And now, as you can see, that's what you call the absolute path. Now, the absolute path, of course, is different from the relative path. The relative path starts from my current project dot. It just means the current folder. It means test here. Okay, dot. Here, when it comes to absolute path, I'm starting with HTTP, something like that. So as you can see, voila, I have the full path here. If I go to my website, both of them are working, of course. Voila. The idea simply here, the location is different. So this one here is available online here. It's not on my local machine. So I will have to use the absolute path to access this image here. This one here is inside my project, so I can use the relative path. It should be simple. Can you see now the difference between relative and absolute path? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Okay. In HTML also, we could have some entities. What do I mean by entities? Actually, let me show you. Let me just get rid of this one. So we can just say HTML entities. And symbol. So let me just make it as like that. So some of the HTML entity here are, of course, you can Google them here. So let me include this one here. Let me just write div. So the entity normally start with at. So if I add at hash 169, you don't need to remember this stuff, of course. You can just simply Google them. So if I refresh this one here, as you can see, I have the C here, which is the copyright here. So the copyright, if I want to show a copyright on my HTML, I can use this entity here, as you can see. Of course, you can Google stuff. We have a lot of HTML entities. So let me put here, click on that. So HTML entities. And of course, I can either go here or here. So let's try to list them, all of them. So as you can see, agree and proceed. So if I want to show here the exclamation mark, I can use this entity here. If I want to use a double quote, I can use this one, hashtag, I can use this one, $sign, I can use this one, percent, I can use this one. So I have a lot of different entities here. So let me use this one as well. Let's create a div for that, put them here. Actually, I forgot here a semicolon, so they need to end with this one. Like that. So let's go here. And as you can see here, I have a copyright sign, I have a $sign. So in HTML, as I told you here, we have many different entities here. Of course, you can search for those here if you want to show them. These entities, they have special code. So if you want to show any of those here, it's a good idea to use this specific entity. Is the idea clear? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
we have some symbols, of course. So also if I say HTML symbols list here, let's try just to list them. For example, I can show as a copyright, as you can see, this registration trade. If I want to show some currency, I don't know, this stuff here. So that's what you call the HTML symbol as well. And all of them also, as you can see, they have some code. I just need to copy it here. So it will be at #169 for the copyright sign. We've already seen it here. If I want to use TM here, let's choose RL here. So all I have to do is just need to copy this one. And now if I go to my HTML, just need to create a new div and add this guy here. And voila, as you can see, that's the area. Is the idea clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, we can add some emojis here. So for HTML also, you can have a lot of emojis. So you can just say HTML emojis. Yeah, so there's list of all, there's a lot. What you can search for them here. Let me just take, for example, this guy. So if I copy this guy and I go to my HTML here, I create a div for it. And I just paste this one here. And well, as you can see, that's my emoji. Should be fine. How can we create a form in HTML? So form is quite important here. If I want to sometimes submit some data, most of the time when you want to register for a website, do anything, you will need a form. So form is actually quite important. To create a form in HTML is super simple. All you have to do, just say form. Voila. Inside the form, we have something called action attribute. We don't use the action attribute. The action attribute, normally it will try to send your code to the backend. That's not what we want to hear. For now, we don't have a backend, so we just stay with form here. Of course, for the form here, normally we have a lot of different elements. The most two popular element here, it's I can just add a label here. And I can add label, for example, for email, for example, email like that. I can just add email. And here I can just say email. And now I just need to create an input. So let's just create an input. Voila. The type of input here, it will be email. Why? Because here I'm saying I want to show the email here. So here for the input, I can add a lot of attribute here. I have type. I want it to be email. Of course, for the input, it could have multiple types. We have a lot of types. It could be a button. It could be checkbox. It could be color. It could be email. It could be date. It could be a lot of stuff. For now, I want this input for email. I can give it a specific ID. Also, I will name it email, and I will give it a name. This name here, property, is very important. Why? Because if whenever I click on this label, it will take me to the input. Here, why? So I'm saying here, this label is for the email. That's the reason why I need to include this guy here. And also I need to include the ID as well. So that's something must. If I go to my website here, I refresh. Now notice when I click on this one here, I'm clicking on the text on the label itself. And as you can see, I can add directly. So what's happening here, because I add the attribute 4, this attribute 4 here, because I added to this label. So let me just make some space like that. Let me create a PR tag for now. So because this attribute here, or this element, which is the label has attribute called 4, and because the ID here, it's the same, email. When I click on this element, it will directly highlight, go to this element. The reason for that, because I'm using this attribute here. We use that a lot in form. So if I want now, as a user, if, for example, I want to write my email here, not all the time I want to click here. No, maybe sometime if I click on the text, it should highlight it as well. So when I click on this one, notice, now I can write directly. Voila, as you can see. And the reason for that, as I told you, because they have attribute 4 here. And 4, of course, it will take an attribute, and then after that, it will go to check the input. All the input, if you have multiple input, it will check which ID is called the same ID as this one. It will just code inside this one, and it will highlight it for me. Clear? Yeah?
Yeah.
Of course, we have buttons. Form all the time we have buttons. So let's just say click me, for example. That's actually valid form here. What did I forget? Button click me. That should be fine actually. Yeah, maybe my button. Yeah, my button here. It's in the same line. I don't like it. Let me just yeah, create a PR here. Okay, that's my button here, as you can see. So whenever I click on the button, notice something is happening, right? What's happening? When I click on the button, what happens?
It's trying to send the URL.
So it's trying to send the information from the form here to our backend, and our page is being refreshed, as you can see. Click, as the page is being refreshed all the time, as you can see. Voila. Of course, not all the time when it's this behavior. We'll learn that in JavaScript how to stop this behavior. But for now, what I want you to do to know how to create a form. Form is very important, as I told you. We could have labels, and the labels normally it will be for the elements. So for the labels, normally we use them to give a text here. What will this input will be? For example, here email for this input here, and user and first name for this input. That's what you use the label for. And as I told you, label has one attribute is called for, and if I include some text here, and for any input, I have this specific ID. If I click on the label, it will take me directly to this specific input. That should be okay for now, I think. Of course, now again, I can add another label. I can have multiple labels. Now I can add the password if I want. Remember, again, for password and the ID here, it should be password here. If I go here, voila, as you can see, I have password here. And of course, if I click on this one, the password will be highlighted. Notice because the type is password here, I don't see the text here. So if I inspect again, so the type of this input is password. That's the reason why I don't see anything here. But if I change the type, let's change the type here to text, for example. Click. Now here, notice my password, now I can see it here. So the input could have multiple types. We have a lot of different types. It could be text. As I told you, it could be color, it could be email. All of them have different meanings. I mean, we have a lot of stuff here. So let's just click on here and try to search for input types. Click. Input types HTML. Let's click on this one. Voila, as you can see here. It could be a button, even its input, it could be a button, it could be checkbox, something like that. You can check it. It could be a color. Now, if it's a color here, I will have if I say, for example, input type color, let me delete those two. Input. If you type input and colon here, you can also check this one. So type, it could be color here. I can give it a name and ID depending on me, but for me, I will not add any label. If I go to my website here, notice what will happen here. So because the type is here, so if I click on this one here, notice I have like, what do we call that?
Color picker?
Yes, so I will have like a color picker here, and I can select the color I want to. Yeah, as you can see. Voila. So yeah, we have many different input types here, depending on our need here in the form. I can also include some videos and some audios in my HTML if I want to. To use the video here, let me use video here. So video like that. If I add the video tag here, as you can see, I will need to include the source. And source here, of course, it will be just like the image here. Yeah, I can just say, for example, if I have like a specific a location for my video here, I can just say // and // let's say it is my video inside the image / and let's say that's my video. So that's it will be just like the relative path here, the source. And of course, I can also add another attribute, which will be type. So the type here, because it's a video, the type, it will be video /MP4. Most of the video, I mean, there should be MP4 like that. Voila. So you can include some videos also in your HTML if you want to. Any question? Question?
I can only use online video, put the link for video, and then it's okay.
Yeah, but normally we do not include. I mean, it depends on really on the website itself, but we do not include long videos normally. You can include depending on the size you have. I mean, you can include, but if the size of the video is very huge, the website maybe become very slow. Get the point?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's basically a general introduction about HTML. Of course, as I told you, every time you want to learn or you need to learn about any element, you can go to the documentation. It's always a great idea to go to the documentation. Why? For example, let's say I'm looking for a specific element. Let's go to, I can search here, of course. I just can say header. I don't know what the header is, the header tag. I can click on it. So if I go to the documentation here, it will show me the header element. Here's the header element representing the directory content, typically group of introduction here. And if I scroll down here, it will show me even an example, as you can see. Voila. And different usage here, different attribute you could have. For accessibility here, some example. Let's show you others, more example, more result here. And if you go to here, it will show you also what different browser can accept this specific tag. So some browser may not accept specific tag. Don't worry about that now. Most of the browser, if not all of the browser now, they can recognize HTML, so that's not a problem here. But as you can see, it shows if everything is green, that means it's fine for all browsers, not a problem. So as you can see, again, if I go to H1, as you can see, I'm see all my element tag here. And I go down here, it will show me the different attribute I can use with this element here. It will show me different example in details. After that, it will show me the different browsers supporting this element. Maybe I can choose the image here because it will give me some attribute. Well, if I go to the image now, as you can see, same idea. Give me the image element embedded into image here. And if I go down now here, it shows me the attribute here. So it will tell me what different attribute I can use with this image. So it will tell you what is alt here. And if I scroll down here, I should see source as well. Yeah. So height, yes. Loading. I could have attribute also go loading. So it will include a lot of attribute, as you can see here. So if you scroll to the documentation, so yeah, I have alt, that should be fine. I should have another attribute. I have source, yes. Cross origin, of course you can read it. We don't use multiple attributes here, but yeah, it will show you many different attributes here. You could use height for the image. Is map, it's a boolean. It indicates the image part of the server side map or not. Loading and sizes, src, so that's the source, as you can see. Source set. So as you can see, it shows you many different attributes here. Yeah, you can read, you can add a border, you can add a name, you can add a lot of stuff here. So it's a good idea all the time whenever you are using any specific tag, it's to try to go to the documentation. If this MDN is a little bit difficult for you, you can just go in here and try to find the image. You can search here as well. You can just say img. And as you can see here, it will show you the different image here. HTML syntax. Also, it shows you the attribute, as you can see, source and alt. But here, it will show you the most popular attribute. It does not show you some extra attribute, if I'm not mistaken. Question. Question?
Nope.
Okay, that's basically your HTML. Now for the CSS, let's just take general introduction about CSS, and after that, I will give you time to start working on your portfolio. So simply here, as you know, I want to create normally a file, at least one file, CSS. So we normally create a folder called CSS, or we call it styles. And inside it, we can have our style.css. I've already linked my style.css here. And that means I can now implement my style for this different element. So what you need to understand first, what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. It's markup language. So it's just like HTML or Markdown, it's a markup language. It describes how the element look like on the screen. So we can control how the element look like in the screen using CSS. Of course, the extension for CSS to be, as you can see, we know that the file is a CSS file if it's in the extension is .css. That means that should be okay. So what is the general syntax for CSS? So the general syntax for CSS, it will be something like that. So I will have a selector. Selector is what we select the element with. And then I will have opening tag and closing tag. And then I will have a property and value. Simple like that. So that will be the general syntax for CSS. Click selector. So I will have my selector. Selector here, I need a way to select a specific HTML element. There's multiple ways. Now we will see some of these ways. So first I need to define different selectors. This selector could be a class, could be ID, it could be the element tag, it could be many different, it could be a child of the element. So we have many different ways to select an element. I will select my elements and I will have opening and closing tag here, opening and also curly brace. I mean, that's the syntax here. Then I will have a property and value, for example, color red. And I need to end it with semicolon here. And now after that, I could have another property. So of course, normally I will have multiple property and value like that. Voila, voila, voila. Simply like that. This property, I need to know what's the property and then I will give it a value. So let's start here with this property here, this selector here. We have multiple different selectors. So let's start with the first one here. There's something called simple selector. Okay, what do I mean by simple selector? Well, simple selector, mostly we use the tag here. For example, I've selected the body, just add the name of the tag body and then opening and the closing curly brace. And then I'm just saying a font family. I want my font family to be Poppins. I imported this font. This font does not exist on my browser, so I imported from Google Font. So Poppins, and in case this Poppins is not available, I want you to use sans serif. Of course, the background color here, you just give me what will be the background of the body here. There's a background color. I want it to be start with #333 and #333 just mean a black. I want the color, that means the text color. I want it to be white. So that's what we call the basic selector. This selector here is just, it could be simply, it could be the tag itself or the element itself. Of course, it could be also a class. Now we'll see a class. It could be also an ID. So let's first start with something a little bit general. Does anyone know what is universal selector?
Yes.
What is universal selector?
I don't know the name of the symbol. The little star.
So we have the star or asterisk, and then we have before, and we have after, and then we have this one. So that's what we call universal selector. Universal selector because it will select every element inside my HTML page, every element. So this guy here, that's what you call the universal selector, as you can see. It will select all the elements inside my page. And here I'm saying margin 0 and padding is 0 because by default, some HTML elements, they have margin. So even if I did not add a margin, I did not add thing, normally some elements, they have by default some margin and some padding. So I want to get rid of them because I want to style the way I want to. And then we have box sizing, border box, ignore this one for now. I need to explain it a little bit maybe tomorrow morning here. It's quite important. And that's simply what you call as universal selector. Remember, universal selector, it selects everything inside your web page, everything. And when I say asterisk before, that means if I have anything before any element or anything after the element, I want you to select it as well. Is it okay?
Yes.
I will explain a little bit more tomorrow because this is quite important, the universal selector. That's the element selector. And now here, of course, if I want to add an element, let's try to add a paragraph here. And let's just add some lorem text. Voila. Of course, if I want to select a specific p tag, remember, if I use the p tag here, just use the p tag like that, and I add some style. That means if I have 20 paragraphs, all of them, they will be selected. And that's sometimes not what I want to. I don't want to select all the paragraph inside my web page or inside my current page here. Maybe I want to use a specific, I want to target a specific paragraph. If that's the case, then I can add a class here. Class, and here let's just name it my paragraph. Voila. So I'm gonna copy that. Actually, let me make it kebab case here. I mean, it's very common to name our class using kebab case. So now here, if I want to select this element with this class, what I need to do, I need to start with dot. If it's a class, I need to start with dot. And my paragraph, as you can see, voila. And now here it will be opening and closing tag. And now what I want to do here, I want to add a color. This color, let's make it red, for example. Voila. Now, if I go to my website here, as you can see, I've selected the paragraph I want to, and I give it a color. Now, if I create a second paragraph, Lauren, so as you can see, whenever I create this, you still can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, the second paragraph will not be affected, as you can see here. This style, it will only be applied to the first paragraph. Why? Because simply the first paragraph has a class, and I am selecting, see, I'm adding this style to this class, to the element which has this class, and this element simply does not have this class. That's the reason why it will not be implemented on this element as well. Yeah, I think we should stop here. Tomorrow I will give you a little bit more information about CSS. Yeah. So what you should do now? What you need to do now is, of course, remember all the time you need to Google stuff here. I'm going to share this link with you on Slack. Well, so we have a project here which will be 2 weeks project. Let me just stop recording.